Short. Today's webinar will be presented by Matt Jurek, a physical therapist with a wealth of experience in offering RTM to patients across America. And he's working closely with Physiotec, Practice Perfect's home exercise plan partner, to develop a system for offering, tracking, and billing Medicare and other insurance carriers for providing RTM services. Now, before I turn it over to Matt, I'd like to take a moment to cover a few housekeeping items. We kindly ask that you leave your microphone muted for the duration of the webinar. Webcams are not required either, and you may leave them turned off. There will be a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar, and you can type any questions that you have in the chat during the meeting. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel afterwards. So if you have anyone else at the clinic you want to share this with, you're welcome to share that link afterwards. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Matt, and he's going to teach us all about RTM.
All right. Thanks for having me, Matt. It's not too hard to remember your name, but everybody else's, don't quiz me at the end. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate the time, the opportunity. What I'd like to do is just start out sharing a little bit about myself, because who am I? Why should you listen to me? All that stuff. I kind of want to get to there and then get to the point to why you're here about RTM. It's a very hot topic, and I find it a privilege to be able to do this on behalf of Physiotec and Practice Perfect. So it's a cool spot. Glad you're here, and let's get to the point. So my little story, don't worry about reading everything. Basically, I'm a PT, have been working in the outpatient therapy setting since 2008 when I graduated. And my wife, who's also a PT, we decided after having done that for a decade out in Oregon, we were going to set sail and become contract PTs. So we did that. We wanted to see the country, take our family on the road. And when we returned to Oregon, where we had been prior, I'm good friends with the owner there. And this was the spring of 21. I asked, what could I do from the road? How can I help you from the road? I want to help you guys. And he asked me about RTM. Had you heard these letters being thrown about? I said, no. He said, if you can dive in, figure them out, how to make them work. I don't have the bandwidth as the clinic owner of 4 clinics to figure this thing out. So if you can do that for me, we'll come up with a deal. So in that, I was blessed with the time, which I know as a PT we don't have, and the ability to dive into a place that was unexplored, which is the RTM space. And so in doing so, kind of found myself in a gap that I was able to take my knowledge, apply it locally to a couple clinics, which I know needed a platform on which would draw patients in, right? So the patients have to interact. We all kind of know that basic premise of what is RTM. And so in doing so, we had 2 platforms I could function off of. We had been using Physiotec for 7-8 years as our HEP. The 12 PTs knew how to do it. So I said, okay, this is what we're going to go with. I contacted Physiotec, and they said, wow, you're on the ground running. We haven't met somebody that is actually making this RTM space happen. What can we learn from you? What can you learn from us? So that's where our relationship developed, and it's blossomed into this part where I'm part of their solution. And I'm going to share with you how that happened. So that's me and why I've gotten to be so intimate with the RTM space. So today, what we're planning on covering is, what is RTM really? You know, where is that? We've heard interpretations based on the couple sentences that have put out now the further rule for this 2023 year from CMS, and there's still interpretation being thrown about. So depending on how far down the rabbit hole you have gone, you might hear very similar things being presented today. Just the way that I present, I think might turn on a few light bulbs for you. And then we're going to go about, is this worth it for your clinic space? So we want to present the patient benefits, PT practice benefits, and then give you an idea of what this could actually look like in your clinic space. All right. So what is RTM really? Again, these are the interpretations based on CMS's guidelines. But the background to understand first is they were put out to mirror what was already in existence with RPM, so remote physiological monitoring. And I compare that to a cardiologist, let's say, that needs 6 weeks worth of data from his patient. So he provides this unit, says, you're going to wear it, you're going to train it. He trains how to turn it on, what he's going to do with it. So there's training, supplying the device, capturing the data, interpreting the data, and relaying it to the patient. So that was in the RPM world where they had these codes set up. So it wasn't difficult with the data that was coming out during the COVID time, where there was less face-to-face interaction with patients necessarily, where CMS was able to gather, these bodies were able to gather this data of, look, okay, if the patient has some kind of accountability with additional hand-holding communication outside of clinic time, what that looks like. We know that these patients time and time again are getting better. They're doing their exercises, they're taking their medicine. Our medicine is exercise. And so they're actually doing that. They're getting better, they're reporting better outcomes. And everyone likes their hand held through a tough time. And so that extra little bit of communication goes a long way. So they said, okay, we're gonna figure out a way to bill for this time, this professional time that PTs are spending. And I should say, go down to my next point here. PTs, OTs, speech, and physicians can build these codes at this point, where the way that they are written. The assistants can as well. This is a common question I get. I'll just answer right off the bat. The assistants can as well. It has to be direct supervision is one rule. So in the clinic space with the PT present, those kind of rules go along in hand with the assistant helping. But then it's also the 98975, 80, and 81 codes are subject to the decrease in reimbursement by assistant. The 77 code is not, and I'm going to explain each code as they go here shortly. That's a common question I get, so I figured I'd throw that out there first. So here are the 4 codes, and it doesn't take long down the rabbit hole to come across these numbers and see that they're there. I'd like to spend a couple minutes giving the synopsis of what is required to be able to bill each code. So we've got 98975. That is, you provided this equipment or software application. So that is written into the rules. Physiotec, who we're presenting in this webinar, is registered with the FDA and following their guidelines. So they're within the requirements and at that point. But the 7.5 can be billed once for a patient episode. So if last week you saw Mrs. Jones for her shoulder, you can bill the 7.5 and go through the RTM sequence, which I'll present. In 6 months from now, same calendar year, she comes in for her hip issue. That's a separate issue. You start over again with that 7.5 code. So that's another little contingent there. So each new plan of care, each that matches the new episode of care, you go through the sequence of billing. So the 7.5 happens just by training the patient, setting them up on the equipment, basically. The 7.7 is reimbursement for this device that is going to garnish some kind of data. And I'm going to flip ahead here because this is where PT's eyes start to glaze over. This is on a counter of days. So once RTM has been engaged upon with the patient, the counter begins. Every 30 days, as long as there's documented proof of that patient completing some kind of trackable activity, you're getting some kind of usable data, that patient engaging with 16 of those 30 days. And this can go on as long as the plan of care is open and active and signed for every subsequent 30 days thereafter. This is where PT's eyes glaze over. I'll repeat that because you automatically see that it's required to have patient engagement. How are you going to get that? So I'll present that as well. Then we get down to the 8.0 and 8.1. And the analogy I like to give here is the first of every month, you're given an unlimited number of buckets. The first bucket is labeled 8.0, and you fill that bucket up with time spent on the patient's behalf outside of face-to-face contact. Okay. So what can that look like? Basically, it drops into this bucket. So a couple minutes spent updating their HEP and tracking their engagement. A couple minutes sending an email from here or there, or weekly girls that can go out. A couple minutes on the phone with the doc because you're kind of afraid of the outcomes of Susie Q's knee, but at least one contact with the patient via phone or video. It does not have to be the full 20-minute time with that patient contact. So if you're at 18 minutes full in the bucket and you talk to Susie Q about stair navigation at home and swelling control and reminders to do her work, that only lasts 3 minutes. You've filled up that bucket. Now every single minute starts filling into other buckets. Each one of the other buckets is labeled 81, but it takes the same requirement to fill that bucket as 80 did. So those are my best explanations of the 75778081. For speech respiratory therapy, professional opinion on what you're giving them, the 76 code would go in that category. For the typical outpatient PT and OT place, it's the 77 code. All right, so now that you know that, okay, fine. Maybe Matt's explanation helped that pill go down a little bit, but really what's our payoff, right? The really cool thing that I was able to do, our first successful month was the month of September this past fall, after overcoming hurdles, figuring out how to do patient compliance, figuring out how the workflow happens inside the clinic to make this happen, and the platform's capacity to track what I'm asking it to do. September was our first month, the September of 22. And in so doing, I had 4 clinics to look at. And I wanted to see, I knew that Medicare was going to reimburse. Okay, Medicare, Med Advantage plans, we're going to establish this is part of their care. So I was able to track a lot of things with these patients and get to know them a little bit and speak with their experience. The interesting thing that I found was that the average age of those that I was able to bill on, the compliant ones, was 74. So already I showed myself that I judged the book too quickly. And that's something that we all do, I think. But we should recognize, honestly, the day and age that we're at. I'm no longer 20, I'm 40. So I've had a smartphone in my pocket just about as long as these folks too, that are now in the Medicare age, right? They all ordered Amazon packages for their nephew across the country this past Christmas. So they know how to use a digital format. So 74 was that average age. And when I spoke with those folks, they were very blatantly honest with me about, yes, it appeared that it was one more thing to do within my care. But once I got over that simple step, with my prior experience in PT and having 5-6 pages of mixed exercises to kind of handle after 6 weeks of being with the PT, I was actually doing my exercises. It's all housed in one place. It's nice and clean. Like, I'm getting better quicker because I'm being accounted for. So it was cool to hear that real life scenario from these folks. And they like the fact that they can ask some questions without waiting. So we go around the PT side of things, and we know that their happiness is going to relate to our happiness, right? First off, let's eliminate those paper handouts. Honestly, they can handle the electronic communication at this point. So we don't have to put up with the excuses anymore. If I lost my home exercises, what should I do? You're trying to organize, run to the copier, do all these things, click the send button, it's gone. Unless it's going to be a true impedance to your care with that patient because of their technological ineptitude, well, then you just don't do it with them. That's fine. But, you're not going to get 100% of your folks clicking on those required amounts of times. But the PTs are like, dude, my folks are getting better. I can move them around. In our busy clinic, we found that, Mrs. Jones, who was originally, we thought, 2 times a week for 8 weeks, but during her care there, the wait list is going like this. That 5th week, the PTs are like, Mrs. Jones, you're doing great. Let's switch it down to 1 time a week. And now you're getting those people off the wait list. So they're happier. You're happier. The schedules are busy. it's turning out to be a good thing with that intention and attention. That's kind of what I drive home. And then, of course, yes, we're generating some increased revenue here to make up for that year by year cost reduction, 4.4% again this year. So in those clinics that I was working with in Oregon, we were at a standstill of, can we even keep our doors open to the population that needs us? So they actually went on trial with 2 of the clinics to say, okay, we're going to close our doors to new Medicare patients. We're doing this RTM thing. Now we can better serve them. And so we're opening those doors back up, which is great. So here's the actual breakdowns, kind of some math, some numbers for us. The numbers that I listed are what Medicare alone pays for 1 unit of these charges. So these do not include coinsurance or secondary insurance reimbursements. This is 1 unit per what Medicare will pay. And this is the range that I've seen across the country. Now, having a chance to work from coast to coast and in between, we're seeing these ranges. And unfortunately, there's a couple that are on this lower end. The majority are up towards the top percentage. I don't know if you've checked on your fee schedule yet. But 98975, I trained that patient, gave him the education, on board we go. We're sitting just shy of $20. For the 7.7, they logged in 16 times, 30 days. We're sitting right around $50. The 8.0, I went ahead and made that 1 contact call, got my 20 minutes. We're sitting right around $40. 8.1 is right around $30. So in 2 months, I could, if I was going at it max charging, I'd come up with 7.5 once, 7.7 twice, 8.0 twice, 8.1 twice, and that's where you get this number that's been thrown around since software companies were pushing RTM programs, you know, that $200 per plan of care. So that's where that comes from. Yes, you are already seeing that it's going to take some work to get there. So I'm going to show you the realistic kind of what we have found and what it ends up looking like. But if you max billed, went for those folks in 2 months, and you brought in 30 new Medicare patients a month, these are the numbers we're looking at. So it rolls over on itself, and it can make a difference. It can allow you to continue to serve your community that way. All right, so now we start to get into the real life kind of place. One thing that I have found, and myself being a staff PT, myself being a clinical director, and then myself doing this, I know how PTs are going to make sure that you know that they're upset that you moved their clock from the east wall to the west wall for the next 6 weeks. So if you tell them they got to do something extra, you're going to hear it for the next year, right? So the first thing is to kind of sit back, not get too excited about these codes, look at what you're already doing and how that interlaces into the codes themselves. We're already issuing a home exercise program, additional education, and that is our prescription. That is our medicine. Maybe it's our gracious nature, not sure, but we let people off the hook too early. We think this is going to help. In fact, we know this is going to help their care. So we're going to expect and encourage their compliance. We can get reimbursed with that now that we're paying attention. It's another tool in our belt to make sure folks are doing this. Answering questions outside of clinic appointments. How often do we get pulled away in our busy day to finally talk to that doc about Susie Q's knee? That's part of time that's added into the bucket. Or Jim Bob, the weekend warrior, who doesn't see you because he's on vacation for the next week. He screws up his shoulder painting the house. He emails you 2-3 times and you respond to those. Those are reimbursable times. So finding those common points of what we actually do on our day and how much time is allocated to it, like we're getting paid for it now. It's just going to take a couple certain steps to make sure that we're tracking it. The next step to implementation is figuring out where in your clinic is it going to be best. So the 2 effective models that we have found is what I've termed centralized and independent. So for my example, I handle all the communications, the RTM billing, everything that goes into it for my PTs, my 12 PTs out in Oregon, spread across 4 clinics. They just have to tell the patient, this is what you're doing, here's your home exercise program, and give them little nice nudges along the way when they're having that contact with the patient. Otherwise, I'm taking care of the rest. That's centralized. Independent is each PT is trained, super knowledgeable, knows how to utilize the dashboard that they're looking at to generate billable time objective data that goes in. So those are the two ways that we have found implementing. And that's the cool thing, is we get to talk and figure out in your clinic what's going to work best for you based on your unique space. So here we go, kind of laying out a workflow. So we're just going to start with the 7577 code. I kind of call that the low hanging fruit. That's a great place to start in the RTM place. You will hear differences in what I'm about to say. And I like to tell folks, I can give you the keys to the car, and you can drive on a 65-mile-an-hour highway. You can drive as fast as you want. I'm going to teach you how to drive 65 miles an hour. Some folks don't feel comfortable billing the 75 code until these 16 days have met. So they roll these two together. Nowhere in the language that I've read directly ties 77 or 75 to 16. And I've seen this being reimbursed at the time of eval without the 77 16 indicator. So that's how fast do you want to drive kind of thing. 65 in my mind's clean and smooth. Some folks want to pump the brakes just a little bit more than they need to and roll these together. But for this scenario, we're going to build this at time of eval. So the workflow that I've established is we train the entire staff. Your front desk staff is key in this, because before the patient even comes through the door on time of eval, they should know that for them to take advantage of your services, they are required. You can use whatever verbiage you want to use, however strong you want to. We like to say required to participate in what is called RTM. And this is RTM. It's accessing your home exercise programs that are always going to be in one little place. Great videos, chance to communicate through it. That's where you're going to get your exercises from. And that's where your PT is going to keep track of your engagement. So they're notified 3 touch points before they even enter the clinic room for the PT to do the evaluation. PT's observant. They see Mr. Jones take his cell phone out of his pocket, put it on the table before jumping on the plinth. And at the end of the session, he says, okay, there's 4 exercises I need you to get started on because we need this to happen. I'm sending now. He clicks the send button, and he might say, oh, well, I saw that you took your phone out. Can we just set it up on your phone real quick? It's honestly a 2-minute thing that you're doing at the eval. And then I wrote this sending training video, and my workflow within the first 24 hours of the eval, they get a welcome email that has a link to a YouTube video that walks them through the interface of Physiotec and signing on. So I feel confident that these folks have been trained. So I'm going to bill 7.5, an untimed code, at the end of my eval. That's $20. PT presence of mind. So I know that I've been working with Mr. Jones for 3, close to 4 weeks. He's in the clinic. He's doing his exercise. Mr. Jones, it's looking like things are coming easier. I need to update your home exercise program. So you got Physiotec open, switch it around, you modify it, you're tracking what he's done. Boom, the dashboard tells you and triggers you, hey, look, Mr. Jones got his 16 days. So you're going to throw 7.7 on at that clinic visit. Simple copy paste extracting the report that Physiotec's exported for you that goes into your daily note. 7.7 goes in, that's an untimed code. And we see that these two, the 7.7 compounds on itself with good adherence by the patient. So just for 4 patients in 2 months, these 2 codes will render you around $480 additional reimbursement. Okay, that's realistic. I can swallow that. So we say, okay, maybe a little bit extra effort, we get the 8.0 code. 8.1 code, if we got a chatty Cathy on the phone, let's make sure we're getting reimbursed for that time. So there is a way that we're working towards automated electronic communication through the Physiotec dashboard. That will be a component. As it stands right now, what I do is just my weekly emails. I just BCC my folks, send them girls, and direct them to an extra education, just basic education that they get in their Physiotec portal. That is drops in the bucket. Talk to the doc about something, that's drops in the bucket. Access track the time manual for when the home exercise program was modified, times in the bucket. And then a few clinics that I've been working with are actually scheduling just slots, 10 or 15-minute time slots in PT's day, where he sits down and he knows he's got 3 patients scheduled. He's going to pick up the phone, call those folks to kind of fill that last bucket. It can happen organically. We can be serious about it. It's up to your clinic time and what you're ready for. But that's where those extra calls come in. So if you build 8-0 on those same 4 patients in 2 months, you're looking at $320 additional reimbursement. So just from 7-5 once, 7-7 twice, 8-0 twice, we're looking at around 800 change from 4 patients in 2 months. And of course, this rolls over. So those 4 patients that first month, if that's all you get each month is 4 new patients in Medicare, 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16. You kind of see how it rolls into itself. So how does Physiotec help? The easy logins. I hope that most folks that have been using the Practice Perfect kind of have the Physiotec knowledge already. It sets up a super easy login for patients to access their portal. There's no time to that. You as the practitioner can set various parameters, home exercise compliance, signal difficulties along the way with RPE, how difficult it is, pain, sets, reps, you name it. An intuitive dashboard that's going to easily trigger your PTs when to do what and keep track of things for you, because we got 30 days, we got calendar month. You need this item to come in there. The customizable automated message, like I said, that's down the pipeline. That is coming soon. And then one handy dandy way to export everything super quick and get it into your documentation to support your billing. So what Physiotec's done is said, okay, I'm hearing you, Matt. Here's what we got for you. We've got a way to track the parameters per code, 7-5, 8-0, 8-1, your buckets. You're adding your buckets here, and it's going to notify you. Whoop, we're ready to bill October. And Susie Q's only 4 logins away to reach 10 days. I'm good to go. I'm going to hit bill, check which codes I'm billing, export the report. I'm good to go. I feel comfortable sending that to the insurance because of what I've tracked. Not only that, but Physiotec's recognized that triggering dashboard is super key, but so is the triggering the actions and the automatic workflow that needs to be established to have this sequence happen smoothly in your clinic. So they offer, yes, the dashboard, but very one-on-one training with each person in your staff at different steps to make sure that we're overcoming each one of these hurdles before we even hit the start button. So here's our little roadmap. Step 1, this is today. You've completed that. Our next step, we're going to meet one-on-one with a Physiotec expert and myself, and we're going to talk about what it's going to look like in your clinic. Oftentimes, people will sign up because they're ready to rock and roll. Step 2 melds into step 3. We've got the leadership on the phone. That's our first step. We need to figure out which way we're going, independent or centralized with your RTM billing. And then we need to make sure all the background stuff in terms of billing procedures is in place. Meet with your front desk staff. We get everything organized. They're given a little bit of homework to do. Right after that, we're meeting with the staff PTs. At this point, they will be trained to start engaging and onboarding patients into the RTM program. So that is actually their homework. I answer questions along the way. We have a follow-up meeting, and then within 4 to 6 weeks, you guys are set to go. You've got your established workflow in place. We know that patients onboarded takes a month till we can bill anything, takes a month for Medicare to get reimbursed. So our step-by-step progression kind of takes you to that point where you're starting to see those reimbursements start to trickle in and know where you're at. So that's the fantastic part. You get it both ends. You get the software and you get the training when you're working with Physiotec. So in the end, there are 3 components that I found that must be in place to effectively do your RTM billing, unless you're a solo practitioner and you feel you can handle it all yourself. If you got any more than a couple PTs, you've got volume to handle. So you need this comprehensive exercise software to get you in. Use what you're familiar with. That's going to be the easiest on your PTs. They need to have some kind of established workflow along with a dashboard and how to use it, and then get your folks trained up. So we've done the trial and error. We've seen it in action. We've seen it work. And now we're spreading that love across the country and enjoying watching other clinics really help their patients. We talk a lot about money in this because it comes down to that when you're running a business. But a happy patient is going to generate more happy patients. More happy patients is going to help your program out, right? It's a good thing. It's a win-win-win. There's really little loss just to try. So that is the summed up progression of where we wanted to go today, to kind of reach where we were at, to educate you on RTM, share what Physiotec is doing via its integration with Practice Perfect, of course, and start your wheels churning. How is this going to look? It seems like a valuable thing. So that next step is schedule with me, and then we'll get to talk about some price points and things like that at that time. That would be more appropriate when we have those one-on-one messages. So that's what I got for you guys. I really appreciate all your time making the space for me to share this with you. I think we're going to open it up for some Q&A. So maybe we've got a couple chat questions here. I don't know, Matt, if you want to open it up for that, you go for it, sir.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for that very informative presentation. We really appreciate it. We do have a few questions that were submitted from the folks who were registering for the webinar, so I'm just going to read them off to you. Some of this might have been covered during the actual presentation, but maybe we could just reiterate. So the first question is, what are the requirements to bill RTM?
Yeah, so just as a quick review, requirements are you have to have some kind of software that's going to track data, that's going to improve their compliance. That's number one. You train them on it, you can start to bill. You have to have that trackable data bring in 16 out of 30 calendar days to build a 7.7 code. And then we've got the 20 minutes buckets to fill up each calendar month to achieve our 8081 codes.
Cool. Does this apply to speech therapy as well?
Yes, it does. Speech therapy, and that's out of my professional realm. You guys have your own professional techniques when it comes to speech, and I appreciate those differences. So it might feel different, but the same parameters exist. And yes, a licensed speech pathologist can build these codes as well. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. What are the average reimbursement rates for RTM?
Yeah, so we're looking at per code. So that was that slide, that Medicare code. The 7.5 is Medicare pays you once. If the patient does not have secondary, we're not going to include that. Does not have co-insurance, not including that. So just what Medicare alone pays, it's $14 to $19, and then the spread was 40 to 50 for 7.7, same for 8.0. That was closer to the $40 range for 8.0, and then closer to the $30 range for 8.1.
Excellent.
Oh, and Matt, one thing too, before you get to the next one, this might be on the chat list. One thing that I say to patients when engaging them and enrolling them is, where do you check your emails? So if they say laptop, I'm sending them an email. If they say tablet or cell phone, then I'm going to encourage them to download the app and send it to those, make sure those devices are getting it too. So it can, and also Android. So the app is friendly on Android or Apple. Yeah.
Good to know. Couple questions from the chat. Can we enter our own exercises into the Physiotec program? We don't utilize general therapy exercise activities on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's super slick. Physiotech, and this is, there's no way for me to sound unbiased, but as a PT that's traveled around, experienced multiple home exercise programs, Physiotech has the most robust. And when I was working in that clinic and we were using Physiotech for 8 weeks, if I wanted something, it was not hard for me to contact Physiotec. They uploaded the exercises. They'll even, if they don't have that picture in their database, they'll take the picture for you so it fits that professional component that you're looking for. So it's all there. They'll even do videos. I've got a client that's doing a lot of balance stuff, and they have like vertigo, all this stuff. So they have video series that they're starting to work with Physiotec and put those in for their progressions.
Oh, it's cool to know it's pretty customizable like that.
Mm-hmm.
And as a follow-up to that, can you bill other insurances or is it only Medicare?
So yeah, that's an interesting space. So we know, what do we know from last year? We know that Medicare, Med Advantage, Medicaid, federally funded insurers will reimburse these codes. TRICARE, we know TRICARE doesn't do a whole lot of good for our folks that deserve it. But so those are the three. So that's what we went after first. And after a successful fall of doing that, we knew that our private insurers had met their deductibles. So those that we had a good relationship, we felt comfortable asking, would you be okay if we involved you in this program and we build your insurance? And so most of those folks were like, yeah, it's not costing me anything more out of pocket, so go for it, bill my insurance. So through those trial runs, we have found that there are a handful of private payers that are paying this back. It's more cost to them though, right? It's going to make their bill bigger. So it needs to be, a pretty sexy thing for them to get involved and spend that extra buck. So we haven't approached that from an on the ground component, but know that yes, they're catching on. The next two big players, honestly, if I'm talking to any workers' comp that are heavy into workers' comp insurance, that's the next place. We know that the adjusters want to see the engagement. I can't imagine workers' comp not being on board. So I want to talk to you because we need to run a pilot study with you and figure out, how successful we can be in that realm. So I think that honestly, those are the next two. MVA, workers' comp would probably be the next two.
Excellent. A couple more questions. What is the patient's portion of payment?
Yeah, so that is going to, if they owe, right? So Medicare, if they carry Medicare alone, they might have a 20% co-insurance. It's gonna follow the same rate as your normal treatment. So for that example that I put up with the 77 code, for that visit, they might have 2 therapeutic activities and 1 TheraX with the 77 billed in there too, right? So that's going to come at the same co-insurance rate. It's seen the same by the insurance at that point. So rather than go through each number, I'll leave it at that, I think.
And do these billings add to the yearly recommended cap by Medicare?
Yes, they do. That's it fits into the same categories of you kind of meet that cap. You need the KX modifier to get going. The one thing, rather than just thinking about it taking away from the full amount of the cap, one idea that has really led to great success is some of those folks you have to start extending out. Oftentimes as a PT, I would say, you're almost there. I don't need to see you every week. Come and see me in 3 to 4 weeks. We're still tracking, still keeping engagement. That time is still lapsing. They're still engaged. So I can still bill those RTM codes as long as that plan of care is open. They haven't been discharged in the system with that plan of care. So that's a way, kind of using that idea of reaching a cap, extending things out, you can still amount to capturing more from that patient, if you will, that patient encounter.
Cool. And also on the billing end, we have another question. Are you finding that secondary insurances are picking up their portion after Medicare pays out?
Yes.
What they will.
Yeah, that's 100%. If they're dual insurance, you get the full amount. So like in Oregon, for example, that range, I think Oregon tops out for 7.5, for an example. It's like Medicare pays 14.15, $14.15, and then I'll get a $3.70 from the secondary insurance. So they're paying what is the rate in Oregon, if you will. Yes. Sorry, I should have just said yes to that one.
All good. Well, thank you everyone for the questions. I really enjoyed that conversation towards the end here. So just want you all to know, Matt will be available for one-on-one consultations afterwards too. So you may be receiving an email from him with a link to his calendar. Feel free to go ahead and pen in a time if you're interested in learning more about RTM and how to offer it in your clinic. But thanks again for all your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Take care. Have a good one.